Hello again. This is the second part of this podcast, or whatever you want to call it, that will go over chapters 3 and 4. So hopefully, this will get us mostly caught up from these 2 days of missed classes, which is kind of crazy. So, chapters 3 and 4 in your aging book. So, we're going to go right into it here. Number 1, it says, how are the theories of aging important to gerontological nursing practice? And so in the first chapter 1, we talked about the difference between biological aging and social aging. And there are different biological, if we separate biological, there are different biological theories of aging out there. That essentially there's always ongoing research as to, how we age and why we age and different things like that. There's really no one theory that's universally accepted or that it universally applies to all the diseases, and those processes all go with more than one theory. We can also think about last semester, we talked about some of the psychosocial theories. We talked about some of the, like Erikson's developmental theories of aging. And really, we can use those to try to attempt to explain, to predict some of the changes in the roles and relationships, some of the things that happen in later in life. And really just kind of, really, since there's not one real theory that applies that they found that fits all the aging processes, nurses can use a variety of these theories to help older adults plan for these types of changes that may occur as they age. And so as nurses, it's really important our knowledge of our theories and how these processes change as they get older can help us to provide accurate information to any older adults or their families that may be trying to help them. Number 2, it says describe health promotion strategies that are supported by biological theories of aging. And so health promotion, just again, it's a lot of reflecting back to 201. Remember in nursing, everything builds upon the next course. So not just taking a test and forgetting the information. You have to retain it to be able to apply it the next semester. So it talks about health promotion, and we talked about health promotion a lot last semester. Promoting of one's health, trying to improve health among people in our population. And so what are strategies that we can do that are kind of supported by some of those biological theories of aging? And so if you look in box 3-5 in chapter 3, I don't have a page number right with me, but it talks about some of the things we can do, and these are things that some of them we've talked about already last semester, is things like avoid environmental pollutants and unnecessary radiation. So for instance, radiation and skin cancer. If we avoid some of that, obviously that are things that can help and reduce those biological processes with our cells to reduce that risk of cancer and also really reduce that risk of aging. If you've ever looked at somebody who has sat in the tanning bed or been outside for long periods of time over many years, their skin will start to look kind of leathery and rough. And so again, those are all biological processes of aging. Avoid environmental pollutants. The more we're exposed to the bad stuff, it can increase risks of cancer, increase risk of other types of things. Watch for research on the use and presence of antioxidants. This is kind of a newer one out there when you think about nutrition. A lot of products right now are big if they can say that they have good antioxidants in them to reduce the aging. You can see that in food. You can also see that in some of the beauty products, the anti-aging creams and those types of things. They'll talk about the antioxidants that are enrich your cells and those types of things. Avoid stress. So we all have stress, whether you're in school or whether you're a young person with a new job, whether you're newly married or have a family. Stress never really leaves. And so what can we do to avoid stress, or what can we do to help us deal with stress or cope with stress? Another one listed there is minimize the potential for infection. So if we can do things like washing our hands frequently, undergo immunizations, avoiding those who are ill, really looking at our immune system and keeping our immune system healthy. And the last one listed there are there's some other ones that there might be additional strategies that you can think of. So those are kind of the main ones that we're going to go over there. Number 3, it talks about what are the limitations involved in measuring age solely by chronological or chronology, or however you want to say it. So we talked again back to chapter 1 about differentiating between social aging and biological aging. So when we talk about chronological age, your chronological age provides you little, or provides us as the nurses very little information about what that person does, what they're able to do, where they're at in their life. You may talk to, a chronological age. Maybe you are 20 right now, and what you may be doing as a 20-year-old may be different than what another person is doing at a 20-year-old. And so chronological age provides us very little information about who we are, what we do. It also, can have very little effect when we talk about social aging versus biological aging. It may be very inaccurate depending on what you're talking about. For example, maybe a nurse is assessing several people who are all 70 years of age. They will most likely you're going to see these patients in the hospital. If you see a 70-year-old, they all are going to have different levels of physical ability, of social ability, psychological ability, developmental functions. All of them are going to possess different things. And you can probably think of people who they might be grandparents, great-grandparents, compared to other people maybe in your hometown community, that they all very differ. I remember as a CNA working when I was 16 years old in the nursing home, and I worked with a lady that was a CNA, and she was older than probably about half of the residents that she took care of. So chronologically, there was a big difference between what she was doing and what the patients in the nursing home were doing, even though she was actually chronologically older than them. Another way to look at aging is your psychological age. Depending on how people have learned to adapt in life, their memory capacity, how much memory do they have, their emotions, their skills, their ability to make judgment calls. So sometimes we think about their social age. Over Christmas, for instance, my brother-in-law came home from Peoria and Illinois, and he hadn't been here in about a year, and he made a comment. He went and visited with his almost then, which now 95-year-old grandma. And grandma is very articulate. She's very all there. She doesn't miss a beat. She keeps up. He actually has his doctorate of PhD in electrophysiological chemistry or whatever it is. And she could actually keep up with some of his conversations. So she's very intelligent, very on top of it, and even at 95 years of age, doesn't miss out on too much. So, mentally, she's at a way different level than a lot of 95-year-olds that are still alive. We can also look at social measurement, even if you look at behavioral-wise. Behaviors, they might carry out differently in a specific culture or a specific society, a specific role, very differently than maybe in another place. And I'm actually going to have you be below on Moodle, below this thing that you push to listen to this or to get the link for this podcast. I'm going to put a YouTube link. And what I want you to do is watch. It's from an old show in the 80s. And if you've heard of it before, you may have heard of it because this week actually is Betty White's 95th birthday. But 30-something years ago, back in the 80s, there was a show called The Golden Girls. And the Golden Girls actually were some of them were very different in regards to the social age versus their chronological age. And I'll let you look at the clip, but you'll watch Blanche, and you can see where Blanche is a little bit different than probably the majority, socially, than probably the majority of, or maybe some of the people her age at that time in society. If you have any questions with the Golden Girls video or want to discuss that more, if you're not getting that, please let me know once you have watched that. Question number 3 says, discuss ways in which an individual may impact the aging process through modifying his or her own DNA. And so some of these we have already talked about, but you can look in box 3-4, and they've talked about some of the things. We've talked about environmental exposure to pollutants, their social and economic status, lack of exercise, obesity, smoking, their age, unhealthy diet, exercise, excessive dietary protein, low intake of antioxidants, and things like that. So what are some of the things, they can't necessarily change their age, but what are some of the things that they can do to impact? So they can change their diet, they can change the way that they exercise, or even just start to exercise. They might be more prone to genetically to being obese, but what are different things? How can they change their diet? How can they change their exercise? What are different things that they can do to help with that? So there's a number of lifestyle factors that obviously can shorten a person's life. We've talked about smoking. I think the book actually has a statistic. It says daily smoking of 1 pack, which a lot of people smoke more than 1 pack. Daily smoking of 1 pack of cigarettes a day for 40 years is associated with a loss of 5 additional or 7.4 years of life. So about 7.5 years of life. There's a different way of figuring it. I'm not going to go in that, but about 7.5 years of life, even if you just smoke 1 pack of cigarettes a day for 40 years. It talks about obesity can shorten somebody's life up to like 8 years. So different emotional stress factors, all of those things can alter our age to being shorter. Number 4, it says, discuss the importance of nurses becoming culturally competent. We've talked about this numerous times last semester. In the United States, the percentage of people of a different racial or ethnic group other than white European has continued to increase. Statistics show by 2050, those minorities will comprise of more than 50% of our total population. And so, again, as we all increase in age, there are things to think about there. There are significant higher incidences of different types of disease processes in all different racial and ethnic groups. And you'll learn about that as you go through your nursing education. You might be learning about a specific disease process, and it will say that it's a higher statistics found in such and such a different ethnic group. which is very interesting. So nurses need to become more familiar with, again, not only knowing what types of diseases are more prevalent in certain types of ethnic groups, but also we talked a lot about last semester about becoming more familiar with the health benefits, health beliefs, health behaviors of those groups in order to provide culturally competent care. Number 5 says, what is meant by the term health disparity? And it goes back to healthypeople.gov. We were on that website a little bit in chapters 1 and 2. There also is another website there, the ahrq.gov. That's actually a research website that looks at identifying health disparities. It does some research among all different types of medical issues and those types of things. But between the two sites, you can look and find the question says, describe at least 5 health disparities between 2 or more different racial or ethnic groups. And I'll let you do that a little bit on your own. I'm just going to answer kind of the first question there. It says, what is meant by the term health disparity? So health disparity really refers to both the differences of the state of health and the health outcomes between a group of people. So health disparity, most often the majority, if you are in a better cultural way of life where you have control of more resources such as healthcare, financial resources, those types of things, you have access to those types of things. If you are in an area where maybe financially, job-wise, lack of education, those types of things, you might have some type of health disparity because you don't have access, you aren't educated enough to get treatment in that area. There may be, I shouldn't say there, that was probably a little bit, there's probably more of a lack of education about maybe that disease process. And so sometimes, especially in things like community health, we'll see health disparities among different types of populations and different ethnic groups, depending on what their accesses to resources are. Number 6, it says, define the terms culture and acculturation. So acculturation. And so there's kind of 2 definitions that you'll want to know here. So we talked about culture a lot last semester. So culture is the shared and learned beliefs, expectations, and behaviors of a group of people. So I'll repeat that one more time. Culture is the shared and learned beliefs, expectations, and behaviors of a group of people. So in your own culture or in your family type of culture, you have certain beliefs. You might have certain food preferences. You might have a way you dress more, depending, language, gender roles, social behavior. So what you do socially, beliefs about health and illness. All of those things can be influenced by your culture. So what type, how do you treat some of your health issues? What do you believe in about going to the doctor or different things like that? What do you believe about health insurance? What do you believe about vaccinations? Different things like that. All of those things can be influenced by the culture. Acculturation or acculturation is the process by which a person from a minority or marginalized culture adopts that of the dominant or majority culture. So I'll say that one more time. Acculturation is the process by which a person from a minority, so we have a person from a minority or marginalized culture, adopts that of the dominant or majority culture. So we have this acculturation going on a lot in the United States. You talk about United States sometimes is referred to as the melting pot. So we move here over time. We've all moved here at some point in time, our ancestors, and they have taken their culture with them. And as we have grown and as society has changed, we might have, and you see it now more than ever, we have different cultures. We're intermixed a lot more than they used to be. And so what we might have done years ago as part of our culture might not necessarily be the way that we do it anymore, because we have started to get ingrained into the way it's done here in the United States, or it's done where we live. So I don't know, you can think of different examples for your different types of cultures. You might think of food. Some examples, you might think of like holiday observances, different types of beliefs or cultures that things that you would have done or they would have done years ago that you don't necessarily follow anymore. Some types of practices, different things like that. Number 7 is the last one for this unit, or for, I should say unit, for chapters 3 and 4 outline. And it says, describe the LEARN model as a tool to help nurses improve their cultural competence. And the LEARN model, I'm not sure what page it is on. I believe it is in chapter 4. But you'll want to make sure that you look at it in your book. The LEARN itself is an acronym. We like acronyms in nursing. And so it really helps us improve our cultural competence, or making sure that you understand what that person, that culture, if you're taking care of a person of a different culture, making sure that you're providing the right care for them. So if we're applying LEARN, let's take L first. L stands for listening carefully to what that person is saying. So we're referring to the older person in this course. So listen carefully to what the older person is saying. E stands for explain. Explain your perception of the situation and the problem. So first of all, L, you're listening to what they're saying. Then you're explaining what you think that they're saying. What are they trying to tell you? Sometimes we call this I messaging. I hear you saying that, or I understand that you are saying, or something. You're trying to explain back to them what they were saying. A stands for acknowledge. So you can acknowledge and discuss both of the similarities and differences between what they were saying and how you understood it. Also, I want to kind of go back with the E to explain your perception. So with that, trying to understand what they're saying, but also your perception is what needs to happen also. So I kind of want to back that up there. So you're not only trying to understand, you're listening first. You're trying to figure out to make sure you, in the E, explain or understand what they said, but then you're also telling them your perception of what should happen. So what do you think should go on, or what do you think should happen? A then for acknowledge and discuss your similarities and differences between what they said, what you understood, and what you think. So there's kind of that triangle there. Then R stands for recommending a plan of action that takes both perspectives. So what was their perspective and what was your perspective, and to try to recommend a plan that would fit both of those. And then N stands for negotiate. Negotiate a plan that is mutually acceptable. So again, L stands for listen carefully to what they're telling you. E is explain your perception. So not only understanding what they told you, but also how you feel on the situation, or what you think is important that they need to know, or about information about that. A stands for acknowledge. So you're acknowledging that you understand what they're saying, but that they understand, this is what you're saying, and try to understand the differences between what they're saying and what you're saying. R, recommending a plan of action that takes both of those perspectives. And then N, negotiate a plan. So LEARN is a nice acronym to help with taking care of different cultures and making sure that we have those good communication skills that we can address some of those situations with our patients. That's going to be the end of chapters 3 and 4 outline. Again, making sure that you read these chapters. They are very short and easy to read. And I will follow up with you if any questions in class, hopefully when we have it next week. Have a good night.